Hi, this is Dwayne. I just wanted to talk a little bit about sharing sobriety, sharing my sobriety. And so one of the things that frequently happens in a open share group, which is a Celebrate Recovery small group that meets usually weekly, where people talk about how they're doing, struggles and successes since last time they were in group. One of the main things that someone might want to share is how they're doing sobriety wise. A lot of times, it's easy to be ashamed of how I'm doing sobriety wise. Maybe I've come up with a definition of sobriety and I have not been able to successfully follow that definition. And so sometimes week after week, I don't want to talk about it. But it's very important to realize that talking about my sobriety is the only way to face reality, to be open and honest, and to experience grace, both from God, but also from the people in my group who are not going to be shocked, to be dismayed, to run away screaming because I've broken sobriety, or even because I've broken sobriety every week for the last 6 weeks. A lot of the times we go around the group at Celebrate Recovery. One of the things people share about is how I'm doing sobriety wise. So in my case, I might share today, if I were in a small group, I might say, I introduce myself. Hello, my name is Dwayne. I'm a child of God. I struggle with sexual addiction, sexual anorexia, and codependency. Everybody says, hi, Dwayne. And then either right away or maybe after we've introduced each other, introduced ourselves, we'll get to talk about how we're doing. And usually the first thing I'll say is, I have 11 years, 164 days of sexual sobriety, according to my definition, and 83 days of codependency sobriety. Then I'll talk about how I did this week. I mean, things I struggled with, or maybe I have a definition of sobriety. Let's say I have a definition of sobriety that would be eating sobriety. And typically in the past, one of my eating sobriety definitions might be that I won't have cookies except on a special occasion, or maybe I won't have more than 2 cookies in a 24-hour period or something. Well, lately neither one of those definitions has been followed. So I might say I have 0 days of eating sobriety according to my definition. So one of the things that's tempting to do is only talk about the area where I'm struggling. So in my case, I might come in and only talk about how I'm doing poorly in my eating sobriety. I might say I've got 0 days and had 0 days every day for the last week. And I don't know, I'm just kind of bummed and I'm not really doing much. And maybe I say a few more negative things and then I'm done sharing. But what I've done is I've missed an opportunity to talk about areas of success. One of the things we really believe at Celebrate Recovery is to not only talk about my struggles, but also talk about my successes. And so it's important for me to talk about the fact that I have 83 days of codependency sobriety, and that I have 11 years and 164 days of sexual addiction sobriety. And the reason that's important is not just about me, although it is kind of about me, because it's encouraging to be able to report that I'm doing better, as 83 days might indicate, or doing well, as 11 years and 164 days might indicate. But it's not just to encourage me that I'm doing some good things. It's also to encourage other people in the group. And so it's encouraging to other people in the group to be with me if I'm being honest about my struggles, food sobriety not going very well, but it's also encouraging for them to hear how things are going well with sexual sobriety and better with codependency sobriety, because it gives hope to people who are having a hard time getting together some sobriety. So one of the things I encourage people to do is, particularly if you're a leader, don't give up on sharing how much sobriety you have in an area that's going well. It's easy to think, well, all I'm here to do is share about my struggles. and feels like, I don't know, I'm bragging if I talk about I have 5 years of this or 10 years of that or whatever. Nobody wants to hear about that because that's not appropriate, but it is appropriate. And so it's very important to not just share struggles, but also share successes. The opposite problem would be if I only shared my successes and never shared my struggles. That might be discouraging to other people in the group because it's almost like, ooh, that guy over there, he's really got it all together. Well, I can tell you, I don't have it all together. So there's plenty of things that I could list that I'm not doing very well in. It's just that not all of them am I currently counting in sobriety, in a sobriety sense, or recovery sense, or an abstinence sense. But I always make sure that I try to share at least one area that's going well, if I have any, which I might not, and one area that's not going as well, because I need to constantly be working on giving myself over to God. And unfortunately, I don't anticipate that going away, that need to give myself to God for a long time. So I'm always going to have something I'm struggling with. But I also want to give glory to God for success as He has transformed my life. And so the idea that sharing a large number of sobriety is inappropriate is incorrect, because honestly, I'm not even sure how much how I have so much sobriety in an area that's going well, because it's God that did the work. I mean, I did some stuff, but I didn't do that much stuff, and I'm not responsible for the healing that's happened, that's transformed my behavior. And so I'm really giving glory to God by sharing progress and success in recovery. And so it's very important to realize it's not about pride. In some ways, it's about humility, because I'm really sharing about what God has done. And so that's an important part of it. Now, one of the things I do, you may have noticed, is that I give an exact number of days in how much sobriety I have in areas that I'm currently counting. And I don't know how unusual that is, but I do it for a specific reason, just in case anybody's wondering. Early in my recovery, what I found is that it was easy to have a definition of recovery that had holes in it, or to tell myself that some of the times when I broke my sobriety, it was an accident. And so it didn't really count. And so I didn't need to share it. And so what I found, though, is that if I had an accident and broke my sobriety and didn't tell anybody, I was guaranteed to actually break my sobriety the following week or month or whatever, and I was going to have to share it anyway. And so what happened with me is that it really became clear to me at a certain point that I had been lying. And honestly, I'd been lying to myself more than I'd been lying to anybody else. But the important thing is that I had been lying. And so what I began to do after that point is I actually kept track of my days of sobriety, to force myself to tell how many days of sobriety I had, so that I would either have to lie every day until I finally became honest, or I would just tell the truth. And so it was a tool really for me to encourage myself to be totally honest by forcing myself to say how many days of sobriety. So it's not necessarily required for people to do that. It's just what I do, and that's why I do it. The interesting thing about that is that what I've found is that without that habit, it would be very easy for me to, let's say I missed a week of recovery. And so 2 weeks go by and I show up to recovery and I act it out, but I broke my sobriety over 7 days ago. What I can do is I can come in and I can say, well, I have another week of sobriety. And people assume that I have another week of sobriety on top of the previous however many weeks. But the truth is, I'm lying. I do technically have another week of sobriety. It's just that it started 7 days ago. And so one of the reasons for me that I report on the number of days of sobriety is just to eliminate any loopholes. And at the time I started doing that, what had happened was one of the guys in our group had suggested that perhaps everybody would benefit from taking a polygraph test. And when that happened, I realized, holy cow. At first, I thought, well, sure, I can take a polygraph test. What's the big deal? But then I realized, holy cow, I would have to tell about this and this and this. And, you know, I've been lying this whole time and I didn't realize it, or I hadn't faced it. I'm sure I realized it deep down, but I was so good at lying that I'd convinced myself that I was telling the truth. And so that just allowed me to see how easy it was to be dishonest for me. And so then after that, I confessed all that to my wife. And then I started telling her every day how many days of sobriety I had, so that I was really forcing myself to either tell my wife the truth or lie to her. And if I force myself to do that every day, it's going to be a whole lot harder for me to lie if my heart was even remotely close to God. And so that's been very helpful for me, except on days when I have to confess I broke my sobriety, which is never easy. So, just some thoughts on sharing my sobriety. It is very valuable to have a definition of sobriety, something that's written in black and white, something that I can share with my accountability partners and sponsors, something that they can ask me, so how are you doing on your sobriety according to your definition? So having it in writing makes it harder for me to play loosey-goosey with my definition, makes it easier for me to be open and honest, and it makes it easier for my accountability partners and sponsor to remember what my definition of sobriety is, so that they can ask me in a way that encourages me to be honest and know that they're not going to judge me if I break sobriety. The whole point here is progress, not perfection. So those are just some thoughts on sharing sobriety. Hope you have a great day. Talk to you soon. Bye.